All right, it's Trap Game Thursday. We all know what that means. There are huge conference games happening this week. Week 5 seems to be the one where it could go either way for a lot of different programs. But could it be Florida State taking their time out to go ahead and beat Wake Forest? Could it be NC State going down to Death Valley beating NC State? Louisville and Boston College, could that be a trap game for Louisville? All the things we'll talk about with Alex Donno, but of course we had to start out with the one. What the heck happened to Miami?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Locked On ACC. I'm your host, Candace Cooper. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am joined by Alex Donno of Locked On Canes, and we are going to talk about all things Trap Game Thursday and more. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds than ever before, because BetOnline is simply where the game starts. So we're going to start things out talking about all the trap games of Week 5, but we could not start this show without talking to Alex about Miami and what in the world happened with Middle Tennessee State. Alex, what's going on?
Well, I was tempted to wear a paper bag over my head today instead of this stylish Miami cap.
Yeah.
Wow, Candace. And it was, that was heading into a game like that against Middle Tennessee. That was the type of game where I was definitely concerned about just a flat performance, but never in my wildest dreams did I think Miami could actually lose the game, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they were gigantic favorites, 25.5 points heading in, which only makes the upset look even worse when you're supposed to win by almost 4 touchdowns and you end up losing the game by 2 touchdowns. But it was just a Murphy's Law. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And I don't mean that as any sort of an excuse, because Miami got what they deserved in that game. They were flat out outplayed by Middle Tennessee. And they were behind the 8 ball almost immediately. So the first 2 passes that Tyler Van Dyke attempted were both interceptions, an interception that set up a score. And then his second throw was a pick 6, which was a little bit tipped, but it still wasn't really a great throw. And then on Miami's third possession, Jalen Knight and the running back fumbled it and gave it to Middle Tennessee. And then, the Canes just and then the defense started playing poorly. And so the 2 most surprising things for me coming out of that loss were, again, Miami got flat out outplayed on every level, except Miami's punter was actually pretty good. Outside of that, they got outplayed pretty much everywhere. Defensively, not only did Miami just get beaten down the field by MTSU's fast receivers, so athlete to athlete, they failed, but the scheme was a little bit shocking. So up to this point, Kevin Steele, Miami's defensive coordinator, I thought did really well the first 3 games. He seemed like he had these guys very well prepared for Texas A&M the week prior, even though Miami lost that game. But this time around, the Hurricanes were going up against an air raid offense. And, they were putting their cornerbacks on islands in man coverage and just getting torched downfield. Okay. And I hope that lessons were learned there, because that's a pretty similar offense to what they're going to face against North Carolina the next time they play. Miami's on a bye week now, but, North Carolina's offense is like Middle Tennessee's on steroids, just better players running a similar offense. And then, the other thing that was pretty shocking was just the play of Tyler Van Dyke. I mean, he's been dreadful. And there's definitely a scheme versus player argument to be had there. I think that both have not been good, because they're not running anything similar to what he was successful in last season. It was an up-tempo spread last year, and he thrived in it under Rhett Lashley's offense. This time around, Josh Gaddis has them basically running a Big Ten offense, and a lot of condensed sets, and he just like Tyler, he looks it looks like he was almost giving up on himself in that game. So it's just troubling things all around, Candace.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for people who are like Mario's the quarterback whisperer or not so much, that game did not help anybody find comfort in improvements towards Tyler Van Dyke and maybe their relationship with Mario. But for that game, like we talk about Wake Forest and Liberty, there was a gut check there for Wake Forest when they almost lost to a team like Liberty. Do you think that this for Miami actually losing to Middle Tennessee State, this is that gut check season's going to turn around? Or are you like, listen, we're going to have to take this game by game, program by program, scheme by scheme, and then we're going to have to hopefully pull out some other games to even compete towards the Coastal, being at the top of the Coastal at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it could definitely be a gut check, like in the way of, like, I do think that people's eyes are now being open to the idea that maybe Miami's players are just not as good as we thought they were. But at the same time, the effort looks so minimal. Like, how do you go from, on the road at College Station, your offensive line is winning most of their battles against the Texas A&M defensive front, to a week later, you're not winning any battles against Middle Tennessee's defensive front? Like it seemed like a big effort thing to me. And where the gut check has to come from is, I think that these players, Miami's players, just thought, and even one of their offensive linemen, Jalen Rivers, basically admitted this when he spoke to the media afterwards. They thought, hey, we're just better players than Middle Tennessee. We can just show up and automatically win this game. And, they got outplayed, out schemed, out coached, out everything, to the point where there seems to be a quarterback controversy right now. And I'm very, Candace, I'm very, anxious to see what Miami does there, because Jake Garcia, who came on in relief for Tyler, couldn't do enough to lead the comeback. All right, Miami was down 21 points midway through the third quarter when he came on. But Jake Garcia, the redshirt freshman, like he looks better running those plays. He looked a lot sharper, a lot more decisive, aggressive downfield. Maybe the play calling opened up a little bit more for him because Miami was chasing the game at that point.
Right.
But he looked flat out better. And so it's like, is it to the point where they could actually make a permanent quarterback switch? I'm not convinced, because Candace, if they go away from Van Dyke, you probably can't go back to him. Like if you go away from Van Dyke on October 8th, you're basically, giving the team over to Jake Garcia. And then, Tyler, I wouldn't blame him, probably transfers, finds somewhere else to play. So I don't know if they're quite ready yet to like completely shut the door on the Tyler Van Dyke era. So I'm expecting them to give Tyler an opportunity against North Carolina to start.
Sure.
Again.
And because Tyler is not Mario's guy per se, do you feel like there's more controversy in that regard as to why there's not as much faith in Tyler Van Dyke? Because last season it was Tyler's the guy. Take De'Aaron King out. Let's go. Like we need to go ahead, put this young man in. He is flying. And because of the scheme, of course, it worked for him. But now that it's starting to be shaky, everyone's ready to jump ship. Are we getting rid of him too early?
See, that's the $1 million question, because I can tell you what I've seen. And, basically for the past 3 weeks, the practices haven't been open, but they were kind of open during fall camp. There were viewing portions, spring practice, same thing. And in spring practice, spring game, fall camp, Tyler Van Dyke was the best quarterback on the roster. So I don't know if, because clearly he looks worse in games. I don't know if that's changed in practice as well. But like up until, the last week of August, right before the season opened, I would have confidently told you, this is Tyler Van Dyke's team. He looks better in practice than Garcia does. But now Garcia, in a limited sample, has looked better in games. But no, there's no doubt what you said about, him not being Mario's guy. There's obviously some truth to that. And I think that for Cristobal, I think his ultimate end game is, to get all of his own players in here. And then hopefully, I think he's hoping to not really be judged until it's actually the majority of his recruits on the field. It's inevitable you're going to judge him before that, of course. But Van Dyke is not his guy, and Van Dyke is not accustomed to running the type of offense that Cristobal wants to run. And I think they could probably do a little bit more to tailor that offense to him. I obviously, when your offensive coordinator runs, a pro style, you can't just tell him, hey, now you're running a spread. It just doesn't work that way. Like they can only adapt things so much, but I do think they need to adapt a little bit.
Yeah, not for nothing. Your receivers are down for the count. Like, I don't think anyone's giving enough grace to Tyler trying to make it work with, not exactly world star, 5-star class receivers. He's doing the best that he can, and Jalen Knight's doing the best he can. But like, come on, people. But that's also me trying to talk to Miami fans with a level head, and that's very difficult.
Yeah, and listen, Miami fans don't want to be talked to with a level head right now. I think that Miami fans they embrace the crazy, and I'm not going to say people are calling for Cristobal's job because nobody realistically is doing that, but
Yeah.
I do have some people that are now like almost like giving up on the idea that he's ever going to make Miami good again. They're almost like, which is crazy. And a lot of people are trying to fire the offensive coordinator, which is like, the thing is like, I need to, and I haven't been happy about the way Gaddis has been scheming and calling plays. I haven't, but I've got to give him a chance to fix it. Like, that's my thing. Like, you can't pull the plug on anybody after 4 games. So he's created some problems for himself. He's now got to find a way to adapt and fix it.
Yeah, that's what makes great leaders. So hopefully he can adapt and adjust, and then Miami can figure it out. But I could not have Alex Donno on this show if we did not talk about Miami, because you guys have been the talk of the town, and not necessarily for positive reasons, but it's fine. We'll regroup. We'll do what we need to do to get things back flowing here in just a second. But while we are actually here, betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. So if you think Miami can turn it around from a betting standpoint, I highly recommend you put the odds down. If you think that Jake Garcia might be the quarterback coming around here, maybe there's a bet for you. Go to betonline.net right now. You can use your mobile device or your desktop to learn more. They have the fastest and easiest way to check out all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. BetOnline is not only where the game starts, but it also has your sports wagering information, live betting, and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. So we're rocking and rolling with Alex Donno of Locked On Canes, talking about not only Miami, but the trap games that are happening potentially this weekend going into week 5. There are a lot of good games going down week 5. I don't even know where to start, really. I mean, we can start with Wagner and Syracuse, because let's get that one out of the way. But the fact that Syracuse is going to be 5-0, I just feel like you don't let it slip. Like, don't embarrass us. Like, I know, not for nothing, Miami, Middle Tennessee State, and Wagner are not of the same caliber, but go ahead and get that one out of the way. And then we can start saying maybe Dino Babers is in the running for, coach of the year already. We're starting to have murmurs about that, but 5-0 is pretty impressive considering where we all thought Syracuse would be this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Wagner is never a team we thought was going to be, and it's like not only is Wagner a small team, but they're 0-3 as well against the competition. That's rough, and there's not even a line for this game. Like, if you want to bet on Syracuse, you can't. There's not a line. But no, Syracuse is a tremendous story, and this is one of those. And I know I'm not the only one. Like, preseason, I just thought that they were going to be one of the worst teams in the conference. Yep. Flat out wrong. And I meant to bring this up last week, but it's like, for me personally, the most enjoyable part of watching Syracuse is my friend, former Miami Dolphins receiver Oronde Gadsden. Of course, his son doing an awesome job there, OG Junior with Syracuse. It brings me joy watching him do well and watching Syracuse win. And so, they're going to be, one of the, there's not too many unbeatens. Well, there's a handful of unbeatens, but I wouldn't have thought Syracuse would be one of those in the conference. I mean, Clemson's still unbeaten. We'll see if they can stay that way. Florida State, same thing. But Syracuse is going to be one of 2 or 3 unbeatens in the ACC after this weekend.
1,000%. So we can start from the top. Saturday, we've got Louisville and Boston College. And to me, this will say more about Louisville if they lose to Boston College, a team that is low-key terrible right now. If they even make it competitive, I'm more scared for Louisville in the state of Satterfield than I would be for Boston College and feeling good about, them getting this win. Like, that would be like, all right, what are we doing over there in Louisville, Kentucky?
Yeah, they've got no business losing this game. I do like, the thing is, this is going to be a recurring theme, Candace, because so many of the point spreads this week. So I'm not necessarily looking at like actual upsets, but a lot of these point spreads seem to be very reactionary. So, okay, Boston College got boat raced last week by a pretty good Florida State team. Louisville, they're probably an above average college football team. They're looking for their first conference win. They've been disappointing. I know they've got a lot of talent. We'll see what Malik Cunningham does this week. But I'm looking at Louisville favored 15.5 points in Chestnut Hill. That
Yeah.
seems like too much. Like it seems like I could see them probably winning by 10 points, maybe 2 touchdowns, but
Yeah.
to actually be confident enough to take Louisville minus 15.5 points in this one seems a little bit crazy. So, honestly,
1000%.
there's a lot of games on the ACC slate this weekend that are like not necessarily trap games. They're just great games, but
Yeah.
I could see this as being a trap game for Louisville. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
the saving grace here is it's a noon game, and so like usually
Mhm.
the road games hit harder when it's like a night game.
Yep.
But listen, I've got some scars as a Miami fan with some tough trips over to Boston College, so
Yeah.
I don't completely count them out for as down as they seem to be here. So this is an interesting
1000%.
one.
Yeah, for sure. Another one that I find interesting will be that 3:31 with Virginia Tech and North Carolina. North Carolina team bouncing off a loss against Notre Dame. Absolutely should have won, but I already told people coming off the bye, North Carolina just always seems to trip. However, with this Virginia Tech team and Grant Wells being their quarterback, this defense has to show me something. If you get boat raced by Grant Wells, I really am done with you. Like I told you, I was done with you last week, but I might actually be done with you if you let Grant Wells look like somewhat of a superstar this weekend.
The Virginia Tech offense and Grant Wells, they look inept so
Yeah.
far. I mean, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't run or throw against a not a very good West Virginia defense last week. This to me, but again, like this is another one, Candace, where I look at this. North Carolina at home in a coastal matchup favored by 9 points. Like again, that just seems like a little bit too much. And it's not like UNC was impressive last week. I mean, they've impressed me, their offense at times this year. But they were beaten soundly by a not very good Notre Dame team last week, which I wasn't expecting to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think this is really a battle of what's going to stink worse, North Carolina's defense or Virginia Tech's offense. Because I feel like Drake May and that offense, they're going to score basically no matter who they play against, right?
Yep.
So they're going to score points. I think it's really, can Virginia Tech's offense do anything? But I'm so impressed. And obviously I'm starting to study North Carolina a lot more, given that that's Miami's next opponent. And I'm going to be watching this game intently at 3:30 because I rep the Coastal hard. I love watching the ACC Coastal, but it's like, I'm so impressed with Drake May this year and with UNC's offense. I mean, he's averaging over 300 passing yards per game. They're averaging, I think, 46.5 points per game. And that's despite coming off a loss this past week. And they're averaging a ton of yards per game. So this is one where, I know I already said that maybe being favored by 9 is a little bit too much, but I think that's just like a knee jerk that I do when it's like a divisional game with that big of a spread. But I could definitely see if Virginia Tech can't score some points like in the first quarter, I could see this getting out of hand just by North Carolina's offense just keeping too heavy of a pace for them.
Yeah, but if they figure it out in the last quarter, I'm trying to tell you, App State scored 40 against our defense in the fourth. So it's not impossible, right? I just want to see 4 quarters of play. I would be a happy girl, even if we lost. If I saw 4 strong quarters of defense, I would certainly be really good to go. Another coastal matchup that I think is going to be important, because we all know the coastal, anybody's game right now, will be that Virginia and Duke game. So I think Virginia is a team that is desperate for a win. You saw moments on last Friday at Syracuse, where you're like, eventually this offense is going to get it. Like eventually things are going to turn around. They're going to turn a quarter. They caught a couple breaks with Syracuse, not exactly being great from a kicking standpoint, but eventually this Virginia team is going to get it. A Duke team coming off that Kansas loss, still feeling like, they're feeling themselves, but they got humbled quite a bit. But Kansas is just having a really good year. We all knew that was going to happen. But this Virginia team is desperate for a win. This Duke team is desperate to keep that home field advantage. So I think this is one of those games that could truly go either way, which I never thought was going to happen this season. But, here we are.
Yeah, this is one. And, I talked about like some of the point spreads being way off. I think Duke being favored by 3 is probably, I think either way, favored by 3. But it's one of those where it's like, I'm still kind of waiting for everything to really click for Virginia, because this is a team like, I think Syracuse was a team that I underestimated before the season. Virginia is a team that I overestimated, but Duke is also a team I underestimated. I think as you've been telling people, you got me on the Elko bandwagon and really got me believing in Duke. But it's like I'm just kind of waiting for Virginia's offense to really click
Yeah.
And so I would not be surprised to see them go into Durham. And I don't know if you can use the word steal a win, but maybe go into Durham and steal a win. So definitely, but it's such a close spread. I don't know if you would call that a trap game for Duke or for either team, but I could definitely see Virginia getting in there, finally figuring out some continuity and consistency and coming away with a close win.
1,000%. And last game I want to talk about before we talk about clearly the two biggest games going into the season, Georgia Tech and Pitt. Another coastal matchup where Pitt, is doing all right. They're doing well enough. They're figuring it out with Nate Yarnell, and they're trying to understand their quarterback game, and their defense is certainly stepping up in big ways. Georgia Tech got rid of their coach, Geoff Collins. Maybe he was the problem. Maybe this interim coach, and maybe the guys are going to play a little bit harder. Maybe they're going to be relieved that he's gone. Jeff Sims is still having a good season, throwing over 300 yards. You know what I'm saying? So maybe they just needed to get the leadership out the way, and not for nothing, they're going to come in and punch Pitt right in the mouth. You never know. So I think this is definitely a toss-up game that Pitt can't take lightly.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the coaching move, because isn't it one of those things where if I were a Pitt fan, I'm probably saying to myself, oh, they couldn't have waited one more week, right? Because when you fire a coach, this is not even mid-season. Like this is the first month of a season. When you get rid of a coach, I mean, players are embarrassed by that. Like I've seen this like mid-season, even if they, maybe weren't buying into Jeff and they were, starting to feel like, Collins, if he lost the locker room, like still when you have a team that's doing so poorly, you fire the coach in late September, it's embarrassing. And the players are going to want to come out and say he was the problem, not us. And so with that said, it's like, I mean, maybe I should never say never, because I cover a team that just lost a game where they were 25.5-point favorites. But I mean, Pitt, they're favored by 22 points here for a reason. And Georgia Tech, I just don't think has the horses. Maybe if it was in Atlanta, I'd say maybe they could sneak something out, but they got to go on the road. So this is one where like, it wouldn't surprise me if Georgia Tech can keep this close for a little bit and just not get blown out of the water just because they're playing for pride after seeing their coach get fired. But this is going to be an interesting one to watch for sure. And of course, I rep for the Coastal, so I'm going to be tuned in at 8:00.
Absolutely. Again, I think that Georgia Tech is just a team that needed a leader to give them some sort of confidence, and hopefully they'll go in, whoever the coach is going to be, and just play their own game. And maybe it'll be a gut check for Pitt, a team that's also vying for that top Coastal spot. I really think it's going to come down to Pitt and Miami, but Miami they got to stop embarrassing me. I really want Miami to be the Coastal champion. I was bought in. I was sold. I picked them to win the Coastal. So I need them to just rally the troops, figure it out, and get set. There we go. All right, we got two more games here to talk about. Clearly the two, in my opinion, biggest games here of the weekend. Let's start first with that 3:30 game, Wake Forest and Florida State. All things happening. We're going to pray that everyone down in Florida is trying to, get themselves secured. That hurricane is crazy. So shout out to if you guys are in its path. We pray for you guys that you are not going to experience much damage. But Wake Forest is trying to come into town and get a good win after a heartbreaking loss against Clemson, against a very confident right now Florida State team. If anything, like we have not seen Florida State have this kind of confidence in quite some time. I never thought they would have that with Mike Norvell, but here we are. And so Wake, you got to show us something. You showed a little bit with Clemson matchup. You just didn't seal the deal. Can you do it against Florida State?
Yeah, Florida State favored by a touchdown at home. This one's been really interesting because it opened at 3.5, and then just all of the money is coming in on Florida State, which I find to be interesting and curious. I do agree Florida State is just the better team. I mean, this is one of those things where and I talk to a lot of Florida State, like I have Florida State fans who are blood relatives of mine. People don't believe that when I say it. They talked to me a lot after Miami lost to them last year. They were pretty quiet for a few years before that. I tend to hear from them when things are going well for them and not so well for me. But there's definitely just more trust in that team to instead of finding ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They trust them to make plays when they need it. Jordan Travis having a really nice year, of course. But I'm not sleeping on Wake Forest. Like, how can I sleep on Wake Forest after, what they were able to do? And mainly Sam Hartman, because he's got his mojo back, okay? 6 touchdown passes last week, which is another thing. We're going to talk about Clemson's game a little bit later, but it's 6 touchdown passes against a Clemson defense. I don't know how much they're missing Brett Venables right now, but I'm thinking Sam Hartman can do some scoring on Florida State this week. Florida State pummeled Boston College last week. They looked pretty good doing it against, one of the lesser, sorry, AJ, but one of the teams in the ACC that's not really performing. So I think people are maybe overreacting to that a little bit in Florida State's 4-0 start, because this feels to me more like a game that's going to be decided by a field goal, not a touchdown.
Yeah, and I think that Wake Forest's offensive line is night and day from Boston College's.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to have a bigger battle in the trenches, but I will say Florida State is, figuring it out with Jordan Travis and company. I think that 6'7", wide receiver tight, whatever you want to call him, is doing the damn thing. So it always helps to have one of those in your arsenal, but hopefully we'll see them just remain consistent in terms of just trying to be the team that everyone wants them to be. And there are going to be a lot of Mike Norvell apologists. Shout out to my friend Sam, who started the Fire Mike Norvell Twitter Spaces that went viral. He's gonna have to do a sorry Mike Norvell Twitter Spaces when it's all said and done. So there's that. Final game we want to talk to here at NC State and Clemson. Oh my goodness, I think this is going to be arguably the best game you'll see on TV. Top 10 matchup. You got NC State traveling and down to Death Valley. Clemson coming off that big emotional win, but knowing that they have to repeat it with a very competitive Atlantic opponent. It's just, to me, all the marbles are right here. As much as I want Wake Forest to be in the mix, I think it comes down to Clemson and NC State. And quiet as it's kept, NC State has done a great job. They're just not the flashy. They don't have the Dabo as the coach type. They don't have, the big talking quarterback or anything like that who has 30,000 TV deals, right? They come in, they win, they go about their way. And not for nothing, that's fine. As long as you get the W, people don't care. But I think this is the put some respect on my name game for NC State.
Yeah, this is like a heavyweight title fight here.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I read this today, that this is the first time that these two teams have ever matched up both as top 10 in the AP rankings. So you could say this is the biggest playing ever between NC State and Clemson. Clemson favored by 6.5. This again, I don't know. I don't know if that's too big of a number. It honestly might not be. Their defense has to play better. I know that their secondary was banged up last week, and they basically got shredded by Sam Hartman and Wake Forest. But the offense that Wake Forest runs, it's like Leonardo da Vinci level stuff. Like, it's so ahead of its time. I just think it's a great thing to watch. And in the case of NC State, they're just a really well-rounded football team.
Yep.
And, I know that Devin Leary hasn't been looking like as prolific as he was last season, but he's still been efficient. 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the year. But it's like, for Clemson, I'm eating a lot of my words on DJ Uyunglele, because up until a couple weeks ago, like I was saying, I don't even think this guy's going to be the starter by the end of the year. Because they've got a really highly touted freshman. His name escapes me, but I thought
Klubnik.
That's right. I thought Klubnik would eventually, I thought by the time Miami plays them in late November, it might be the Cade Klubnik show by that point. But DJ is looking so much better. I thought how he played last week, tossing those 5 touchdowns, that's probably the best he's played since 2 years ago against Notre Dame. But the Wolfpack defense is excellent, and they're especially excellent on third down. That's something I'm watching. They're second in the ACC on third down, 7th in the country on third down defense. So I could see this being another pretty close game. I don't think it's going to be like a blowout either direction. I think it's probably going to be decided by, I don't know, anywhere between 4 to 8 points, something like that. And I'm definitely favoring Clemson. I'm rolling with Clemson, and I feel obviously better about it the last couple of weeks overall, even though the defense was not so great last week. But I feel more confident in Clemson as my Atlantic pick, because I have been wavering earlier in the season between Clemson and NC State, but I'm feeling a little bit better about Clemson right now.
Yeah, I want it to be NC State. I think the environment is going to give Clemson the nod. I think that just being in Death Valley, but I think this game is won and lost in the trenches. I don't think anybody's going to be a big, huge playmaker from a receiver standpoint or a running back standpoint. This is going to be won by who can make sure that DJ makes mistakes, who can make sure that Devin Leary keeps on this path of not being as excellent as he has been in past seasons. And for me, if Devin can just figure it out, Clemson is in trouble. if Devin can just have one prolific, like if there was ever a time to be the hero, if there was ever a time to drive back to Raleigh and like you never had to buy a beer in that city again, this is the game, Devin. Like you got to figure it out. So I'm hoping that he can do that and just have, one of those historic stories that he's going to tell his kids years beyond, double overtime, pulling it out, blah, blah, blah. So maybe we'll see that. Overall though, this is week 5. There's a lot of good games. A lot of great opportunities for a lot of teams to kind of make their claim where they want to be, whether it's the Atlantic or the Coastal. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of those weeks, and I have the luxury of Miami not playing, which means they can't lose this weekend, but it also means I can focus on the rest of the conference.
There
and
you
so,
go.
I've got at least 3 games that I'm really, really excited to watch because obviously I'm excited for Wake Forest, Florida State. Since I'm a Coastal junkie, I'm excited for North Carolina, Virginia Tech. And I'm obviously excited for Clemson, NC State. And I'm going to check out Virginia at Duke when I can.
Love that, because you can pop your head in every now and then. It could be an ugly game. It could be a great game. You never know with Duke or Virginia, really. But all that to say, exciting times here for the ACC. Make sure you guys check out all of these matchups. Make sure you hit us up on YouTube or in our different podcast opportunities, whether it's Apple or Spotify. Let us know how you're feeling. Alex, it's always a pleasure to have you. This time goes by so quickly. I would love if you can remind these folks of where they can find you, follow your work.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, you see my personal account for those watching, for those listening, it's at Alex Donno. Make sure you follow our show account because I do most of my like ACC and Canes tweets from at Locked On Canes on Twitter. And yeah, make sure you watch and listen to Locked On Canes every day, wherever you get your podcasts.
No doubt about it, guys. Come back tomorrow. We'll have Freestyle Friday with Drizzy Drake. He'll be swimming it up and being on the show. He is doing good right now. We'll hope that Wi-Fi that he loves to have trouble with every now and again does well for us. But he'll have all the best bets that will help you guys win some big money going into the weekend. For Candace Cooper and Alex Donno, until next time.